Hello everyone, today we will look at a very powerful Virtuoso build that you can use for all PvE game modes. It works very well for solo open world stuff, like for example progressing your account with masteries and collections, and it also works very well for group content like Fractals and Strikes for example. The build provides a lot of boons and offers very high sustain and a lot of damage, and most of your attacks will pierce through enemies, so you will be able to cleave multiple enemies at the same time, and also the build is not too hard to play. First, we will look at the main setup that you will use most of the time, and then I will show you other options that increase your damage when you are doing group content. Your armor, weapons, and trinkets will all be celestial. I have multiple guides that shows you how to gear up any character from scratch, and I will leave them in the description below. But if you have a problem getting celestial gear, then you can use Rapid instead, and one of the cheaper options on the trading post is the Killborn set. So you can just type Killborn in the search bar and those options will show up and you can use them instead of celestial. But of course keep in mind that if you do that, you will lose a little bit of damage and sustain, but it shouldn't be too much. The build should still work okay. And you can do the same thing with weapons if also celestial was hard for you to get. Just look for Rapid weapons on the trading post and it should work okay. And for the armor, we will use Superior Rune of the Thief, and for the weapons, we have a staff with sigil of leeching and water, and then we have a dagger and a torch with sigil of accuracy and sigil of strength. Keep in mind that the order of the sigils doesn't matter. And then for the relic, we have the Zephyrite. For the food, we will use Bowl of Fancy Potato, which will give us extra precision and condition damage. And if that was too expensive, we can use Omnumberry Ghost instead. And we will use Master Tuning Crystals, which will increase our condition damage. You can either use the 30 minutes one for 17 silvers, or you can use the potent one, which will give you the same benefits, but it will last for 1 hour and it will cost about 21 silvers. For the traits and specializations, we have Chaos 2, 2, 3, and then Inspiration 3, 3, 2, and Virtuoso 3, 3, 3. For utility skills, we have Signet of the Aether as our heal, and then Signet of Illusions, and then we have Feedback and Null Field, and your elite will be 1000 cuts. As I mentioned, you will have other options for traits and gear that will increase your damage if you want, and you will find that at the end of the video. Now let's explain how this build works. All of your Shatter skills are your main source of damage and sustain. From the Chaos trait line, your Shatter skills will apply protection, and you will apply even more protection if you have more blades stocked. And then from this trait, our F2 is going to apply Chaos Aura, which will increase our condition damage by 10%. And then also from the Master trait, your Chaos Aura will apply Regeneration, which will help with your sustain. Keep in mind that Chaos Aura itself is going to be good for applying boons on you and applying conditions on the enemy. This will also synergize very well with this trait, which will increase your damage and expertise while you have Regeneration. And then from the Grand Master trait, your Shatter skills are all going to provide different boons, and all of them are going to be very useful. And from the Inspiration trait line, in the Grand Master trait, your Shatter skills will heal and cleanse based on the blades you have, and this will also help a lot with your sustain. And then in the Virtuoso trait line, we have the Deadly Blades will apply increase in condition damage and strike damage anytime we are using our Shatter skills. And from the Master trait, we gain Fury when we use Blade Sorrow, which is your F2, which will also increase our expertise. And from the Quiet Intensity trait, your Fury will apply even more critical chance by 15%, and the trait will also give you extra ferocity based on your vitality. All of the traits we mentioned are related to your Shatter skills, and so you can see they are very important for the build. And then we have also other very useful traits in the build. The Adapt trait in Inspiration will make your phantasms take a condition whenever they are first summoned. And in this build, your skill Torch 5 is going to summon a phantasm, and your Staff 3 will summon 2 phantasms, which means you will cleanse 2 conditions. Temporal Enchanter will increase the duration of your Glamour skills, which we have 2 of. We have Feedback and we have Null Field, and it will also make them apply super speed and resistance, which will be helpful in the fight. And Illusionary Inspiration will heal you whenever you summon an illusion. And for Virtuoso, your illusions are your blades. This will synergize very well for the traits you have in Virtuoso, because Jagged Mind is going to apply bleeding whenever we do critical hits with our blade attacks, which are your dagger skills. And it will also heal you for 3% of the condition damage you are doing. And also from Deadly Blades, on top of the extra damage it will do, it will help us apply more vulnerability on the enemies, which will increase the damage even further. And from the Grandmaster Blood Song trait, Anytime you are going to apply more than 5 stacks of bleeding on an enemy, you are going to stock a blade. And you will do that very easily because you will do a lot of bleeding with this build. So you will find a lot of synergy between those traits, which will do damage and heal you at the same time. Signet of the Aether is going to heal you anytime you summon an illusion, and we mentioned that those are your blades, which you will do easily. Signet of Illusion will create a clone every 10 seconds, and a clone in that case is going to be a blade. So that's basically passive heal every 10 seconds, but it will also have another important use that I will explain later as we go. Feedback is very good because sometimes you'll find yourself fighting mobs around you that will do range damage, and so you can summon feedback to prevent projectiles from hitting you and protect yourself while you are fighting and killing the other ones. Null Field will remove boons on the enemies, which will be helpful in lots of cases, but it will also remove conditions from you. So if you are fighting enemies in melee, for example, and you drop Null Field on you, that will remove conditions from you and remove boons from the enemies. Thousand Cuts is going to summon a lot of blades and it will hit the enemies, which will do a lot of damage because they are blades and they will pierce the enemies, which means they will also do a lot of bleeding and damage. And because of our relic, you will notice that when we use our elite skill, we will have crystals around us that will reduce the damage we take because it will keep applying protection and resolution. This will also synergize very well with Bountiful Disillusionment, and you will find yourself with a lot of boons, specifically protection. You will have pretty much 100% uptime of it because also of this illusionary defense trait. Now let's explain how to use the build. As I mentioned earlier, your Shatter skills are your main source of damage and sustain, so you want to use them anytime you have a chance. F2 will be your most important one for damage, so use that anytime it's available. Your second most important one for DPS will be F1. F3 is useful if you want to break bar on the enemies. Your F4 is going to be very good for your own sustain because it will give you distortion and it will apply stability. And keep in mind that the more blades you have, the more distortion you have. And distortion will basically make you invulnerable. And so this can help significantly with your sustain. Your F5 is going to summon blades around you like this, and they will spin and they will help you do a lot of cleave damage. And the duration of the blades that will spin around you will increase with the more blades you have. So F2 and F1 are your main shatters, and you won't use them anytime they are off cooldown. And then you have your F5, also very good for cleave, but F3 and F4 are more situational. When you have a full amount of 5 blades like this, you will not stock any more blades, which means you will not benefit from a lot of the traits in the build. Like for example, Jagged Mind and Blood Song both synergize very well, but they will require you to summon more blades, which you can't do if you have the maximum amount. So it's very important to use your Shatter skills not only for the damage and benefits they provide, but also to benefit from the traits and the heal and damage they will also provide. All of your Dagger Torch skills will be very good. Your auto attack and skill number 2 will both pierce enemies, so even if you are fighting many enemies together, you will be able to pierce through them. Torch 4 will cleanse one condition, and it will also apply blindness and burning on the enemies. Torch 5 will apply burning, confusion, and daze around you in a radius on the enemies, so this will also be a very good source of damage. And anytime you find yourself fighting multiple mobs or a champion, for example, your elite skill will be very useful. It will do a lot of damage, and it will also summon the crystals around you, which will help with sustain because of protection and resolution. Signet of Illusion will summon a clone every 10 seconds, which will help with sustain as we explained earlier, but also when you activate it, it will recharge all of your Shatter skills, which can be very helpful for your sustain and damage. So for example, if you found yourself in a situation where all of your Shatter skills are on cooldown, and you want to use them again, whether because you need the extra sustain or the damage, in that case, Signet of Illusion can be very useful. It will summon all of your illusions again and you can continue the fight. Staff is mainly there for two reasons. It is for range whenever you can't melee, and it's also very good whenever you need some extra sustain. Your auto attack on Staff will bounce between enemies and also bounce back to yourself, giving you might and fury and applying conditions on them. Your F2 skill is going to teleport you backwards, but it will also summon a blade because it will summon a clone, which is an illusion. So that's extra heals for you. Staff 3 will summon 2 phantasms at the same time, and it will do some torment on the enemies, which will be very helpful for the damage. But it will also work very well with traits that relies on phantasms and illusions for your sustain and damage. Skill 4 will apply chaos armor on you directly, which means you'll benefit from the traits that work with Chaos Armor, and this will synergize very well with them. And then skill 5 will apply some conditions on the enemies, and it will also apply daze. And if you are standing within the radius of the skill when you cast it, it will also give you boons. And don't forget that we have superior sigil of leeching and water on staff, which means once you switch to staff, it will already help you a lot with your sustain, with siphoning health, and give you even more heals. So in summary, you will use all of your dagger torch skills whenever they are of cooldown. You will use F1 and F2 mainly, and your F5 as well when you are fighting multiple mobs at the same time, for example. Your elite is very useful when you are also fighting a bunch of mobs or when you are fighting a champion. F3 is very good whenever you want to interrupt or break bar. F4 is very good for your own sustain. When you are fighting multiple mobs that are ranging, feedback can be very good. And if you want to remove conditions or remove boons from the enemies, then null field will also be a very good use. And anytime you find yourself in trouble, which shouldn't be too often, in that case you will switch to staff and just use all of your skills again. And whenever your dagger torch is ready, switch back to it because this will be your main source of damage. Now let's talk about some other options for traits and gear that will increase your damage, which will work very well, especially in Fractals and Strikes, when you have other people that will heal you. We can remove chaos and we can use dueling. And here we will have 3, 1, 2. From this trait, we will find that our pistol skills from us and our illusions will apply a lot of bleeding. And because of this trait, I would highly recommend that you have a pistol as a backup weapon for group content if you are able to. The pistol doesn't have to be celestial. You can have rabbit, which will be very cheap to buy from the trading post. You can also have sinister, which will increase your damage a little bit, and you can also have viper if you are able to afford those two options. And then sharper image will make your illusions inflict bleeding on critical hits, and in our case as Virtuoso means our shatter skills because they will use the stocked blades, and then shatter 2 will apply blindness, and the blindness will apply confusion. Master Fencer will increase your fury overall, which will synergize very well with the Virtuoso traits that benefits from fury. We can also remove inspiration and we can put illusion. And here we can use 1, 3, 3. Cry of Pain will make your Shatter 2 apply even more conditions for longer, and Shatter Storm will give you an extra charge from your F1 so you can use it even more. Compounding Power will increase your damage and condition damage by 2% per stack anytime you create an illusion. So this trait at maximum stacks can increase your damage and condition damage by 10%, which should be easy to do because of the traits that will benefit from bleeding in Virtuoso. And then the master trait will apply Torment from all of your shatter skills, so that's even more damage, and you will also have the cooldown on your shatter skills reduced by 15%. And last, you will have your confusion with increased duration, and you shouldn't underestimate this because confusion works very well, especially when you are fighting mobs that will hit back very often, because this will significantly add up the damage you will do. If you will use pistol, you will basically just keep spamming your 4 and 5 whenever they are of cooldown, so you will still use all of your weapon skills whenever they are available, just like you would do if you have a torch. The sigil we will use for pistol will be Sigil of Earth, which will apply bleeding, which works very well for this build. We can also remove Zephyrite and we can put Aristocracy. This relic will give you constant 15% condition duration, and that's because Deadly Blades will constantly apply vulnerability on the enemies, so you will find yourself running with the maximum stacks for Aristocracy all the time. And we can also have other options in our utility skills. Signet of Domination will increase our condition damage. Signet of Midnight will improve our condition duration, so both of them can be very useful. Rain of Swords is another very good option because it works as a blade, which means it will benefit from the Virtuoso traits and it will do a lot more damage and bleeding. And from your elite utility skill, you can use Signet of Humility, which is one of the best sources of CC in game. If you have a reliable healer and you want to do even more damage, then I would suggest using Pistol and Torch together at the same time and not use a staff. Please understand that this is only recommended in group content where you have a healer. If you do that in open world, you may struggle with sustain. If you will use pistol and torch together, then once you use your pistol skills, which will be your main weapon in that case, you switch to your torch and just use your pistol 5 and 4, and then continue using your weapon skills like we explained earlier. But once more, please keep in mind all the changes I just mentioned should only be applied in group content like Fractals and Strikes if you have a healer with you. I hope you enjoyed this build when you try it as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you have any questions about the build or anything that was not clear, please feel free to ask in the comments below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you found this guide helpful, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like to see more build guides in the future. I will now leave you with some footage for this build in action. Thank you very much for watching and I will see you in the next guide.